guys, I'm Si and welcome to A.C.E Podcast Nation. On the channel you can get all sorts of interviews, content and podcasts from wrestling, mental health, MMA, football and much more. You can find the video versions at youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation and the audio at pretty much every radio and podcast platform you can think of. So check out the various shows. We have two weekly football shows, Monday and Friday live with ex-Cardiff City and Middlesbrough striker Andy Campbell. We have a MMA show which drops every Wednesday with former Cage Warriors champion Danny Batten. And then every Saturday we drop a wrestling show with post-wrestling journalist Andrew Thompson with a certain Mr. Alex McCarthy filling in for Andrew now and again as well. So we've got lots and lots of content as well as many other series. So today we're going to be mainly talking wrestling and about a certain inside the ropes and a bit more. So joining me, my guest today, I was going to say this evening, it's not this evening, daytime show, is Inside the Ropes owner and host, Mr. Kenny McIntosh. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, sorry. How are you? I'm glad you reminded me it's a daytime show. I will keep my swearing to a minimum. As a Scotsman, it is very difficult to not swear, but I will do my absolute best.
Well, we could be in trouble. I'd put a Scotsman and a Welshman together.
Yeah. Sure how long till the C word comes up?
Yeah, it could be an X-rated show. But so what I like to do with all my guests really is kind of for anyone who doesn't know you, because we do quite a mixture of content and subjects, is I like to take my guests right back to this kind of start, learn a bit about them, where they grew up and this sort of thing.
Sure.
Where did it all begin for you, Kenny?
It began in my mother's vagina in 1984.
At least you didn't say the C word then. I thought that would have been real early.
Well, yeah, you're allowed to say the actual body part. Yeah, no. So, I was born in 1985 in Glasgow. I started liking wrestling when I was 5 because my mum's friend Gail bought like a toy Hasbro wrestling ring, and I'd never watched wrestling before. So my mum got me a couple of wrestling figures. Little did she know what that would turn into. And then I kind of stuck with wrestling for the most part. Then when I finished school and uni, I did a degree in sociology, absolutely useless. So do not do a degree in sociology because you end up at the end of it having to realizing that you can't do anything with it and you need to do something else. So then I kind of worked in TV for a while because I did a postgrad in broadcast journalism. And then I started the Inside the Ropes podcast with my friend Robert Duffin back in 2012. And then it kind of spiraled from there, from a hobby podcast to doing a live spoken word show with DDP in 2013. And then it's been a mental kind of 7 years since that just things have happened. And somehow we've done sold out shows at Paul Heyman WrestleMania weekend in New Orleans. And now we have a print magazine and we do a podcast with Finn Martin from Power Slam. So loads of stuff is happening, which I'm sure we'll get into some of it, but that's kind of the rough story.
The beginning, as it were. So I guess Inside the Ropes seems like the best place to kind of start the conversation. It's turned into a juggernaut of a thing, really. It's the spoken word shows, particularly. They're the first things which caught my attention, sort of over the last couple of years, where you see clips and stuff pop up on Facebook Live and these sort of things, little samples, and you've had some incredible names on that for those spoken word shows, like you say. How did Inside the Ropes begin and develop and then become the entity that it is?
So basically, Robert Duff and I, we had met through a mutual friend in late 2011 at an ICW show in Glasgow, and we kind of realised that we kind of had started watching wrestling around the same time, and we were similar sort of fans in a lot of ways, and we both had a kind of journalistic background. I know it sounds really wanky to say that, but like a journalistic background. So anyway, there was like a community radio station in Glasgow that had a wrestling show. And we heard it and kind of went, I think we could do one as good as that. So we then partnered with a university in Glasgow, Strathclyde Uni, and did a live radio show on Thursday nights at 10 o'clock. And that was like January 2012 we started doing that. And then I was just kind of getting a bit bored in life. And then, so there was a specific set of circumstances in 2013 where I decided I didn't want to work in TV anymore. A relationship ended fairly badly, and then I had to move back in with my mum. So those are like not making me the prime bachelor businessman of the year. So I was like, oh, there should be more I can do with this. And then we came up with the idea of we found out DDP was going to be doing a yoga thing and working for a wrestling promotion in Dundee. So I reached out to his people and said, look, I see there's a day off in the schedule. Would he be up for coming to Glasgow to do this? He did it for a very reasonable price, which since I realised how reasonable that was that he did it. And like we did a show with DDP, then we did one with Colt Cabana, then we did one with Sonny, don't know why. And then we did one with Jim Cornette, and we pretty much made nothing on any of those shows. They were all just kind of like a passion thing. And then after the Cornette one, Robert had said to me, it was a really fair thing he said, we just packed out the Classic Grand in front of 200 people with Jim Cornette and we didn't make a penny. We're doing something wrong. And at what point do we just become marks that are just, doing, and that really got to me because I was like, he's right. And I made the deal for Cornette, so I felt particularly like I had kind of let the team down in that sense. So that was a lesson. So then I kind of moved to Canada for a year and I didn't think I was going to be coming back. I thought I was going to move to Canada and just do something else. And we would just do the podcast on the side. And then Canada didn't work out. So I had this idea, what if we did a tour, like a spoken word tour, just one with a big name. And I don't think I've ever said this publicly before, but the first person that we had in mind was Edge. And we had reached out to Edge's people at the time. And it just wasn't feasible at that point. And then Sting came up. And we managed to get Sting. So we did this tour in October 2015. He'd just done the WrestleMania with Triple H. And then, as our tickets went on sale, he returned on Raw and was doing a top program with Seth. So that was lovely. And then from that Sting tour, I got hired at WhatCulture. And I've actually got my WCPW t-shirt on. So I got hired at WhatCulture, and then as WhatCulture made WCPW, I became a lot more involved in working with talent, which gave me a lot more relationships with talent. But at the same time as that, I also managed to get Paul Heyman for a tour, which was a big deal for us. So things just started kind of bubbling and bubbling and bubbling and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I left WhatCulture in sort of May of 2017 because I didn't really, the guy who ran WhatCulture, nothing against him, but it was very erratic in how he would run things. There's a lot of good people that work there still to this day, and they put out really good stuff, especially Michael Hamflett, Michael Sidgwick. They're big fans of them, Adam Wilborn, Phil Chambers. There's loads of them. So, but I just couldn't work under the kind of, I thought this was the rule. No, this is the rule. Oh, you said you were going to pay me for that, but you're now not going to pay me for that. Yeah. And it just was not for me. So I left, and I was kind of like, I need to make Inside the Ropes work. And I think the thing that's kind of made it keep chugging along is that there's no backup plan. It's just, this is it. I have to make this work. So we kept doing tours with people like Goldberg and Shawn Michaels and all this kind of stuff. And then I thought we'd hit the jackpot, and maybe my sort of confidence came back to bite me in the arse because we got The Undertaker. We got him for a Q&A, a spoken word show, and a meet and greet, contract signed. It was all great. We were all good to go. And then it turned out the people who were representing him hadn't ran it by WWE, which to me is just insane.
It's mind-boggling, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Jesus.
And but then it's like a case of, and Undertaker, to his absolute credit, he didn't have to come. He actually fought to still come. I do think if the StarCast thing hadn't happened, we would have probably got away with doing the shows, because I think StarCast was what really blew up the fact that he's doing other things. Yeah. So then I had to find a way to at least get him over, because if we cancelled it, it was just going to be a nightmare. So we managed to get him over to do the signings, and then Mick Foley stepped in to do the shows, which again he just did not have to do, but he's the best. And so that was a real I thought that was going to be our big thing, and I think this is just me, so I don't think this is other people putting this on me, but I feel very bad about that. I feel very bad about. I feel that I let people down, and I feel that I need to at some point make up for that. And I think that's probably just me because I still got him here, and people still got to meet him. And I've at no other show have I ever got the response that we got at that show. Like there was at the shows, I had at least one or two people every show coming up to me, giving me like cards saying thank you so much. I never thought I could meet him, or a treat for my dog or something, like really nice stuff. But in my mind, I'm like, we didn't 100% deliver what we were supposed to deliver. Therefore, to me, I didn't succeed in that. So since then, I've been kind of working towards how do I make that up to people? How can I do that? So there's something I can't talk about. There was something that was absolutely going to make it up to people, and then coronavirus happened, so I can't do that right now. But yeah, so it's just been a kind of like and then coronavirus in some way has been like a good thing for Inside the Ropes because it's forced me to kind of go, what if there aren't events? Like, what do we do then?
Yeah.
I think that's a long answer to your question, but that's
cool. So I got a couple of things with that. I suppose, firstly, like, I think your reaction to it is like, that's just a human reaction, isn't it? Because, like, to get The Undertaker for a live spoken show, he doesn't do many interviews and he doesn't do many, much of anything outside of the WWE. I know he's done more interviews as of late on certain podcasts and stuff, but generally that sort of thing would have been unheard of, even a few years ago. So I mean, to get him and then have it kind of taken away at the whether it's the last minute, but taken away before you can fully put it off. And I think the fact that you were still able to get him across to do the meet and greets says a lot about you, because I think some people in your kind of line of business, if you like, or similar type events like meet and greets and things like this, they wouldn't have bothered with that. They would have said, once it's done, and kind of just said to people, it's tough luck. So I think it's tremendous credit to you that you weren't happy with just cancelling it. You needed to do something, and you've got not just that, you've got a replacement to the level of Mick Foley. So
I mean, the other
human.
I appreciate that. I mean, the other thing is that like we had the year before gone through this like pretty difficult experience with trying to get Edge over, and I mean, again, Edge actually went so above and beyond. He was lovely to like hear a lot of circumstances that happened in his life. Like we were going to be doing shows every Saturday in October of 2018 because he was going to be in Ireland filming. Then he got wrapped early, so then it was like, oh no, we can't afford to fly him back and forth 4 times.
Yeah.
So then we were going to do it in October, and then Beth's dad died. So then we had to move it to November, and he still came in November, which he didn't have to do. So I think for me, like personally, the Edge stuff was like so difficult. And then I thought, after this though, we've got Undertaker. That's going to be great. And then that was like, I mean, the Edge thing was like a scratch knee compared to the bashing the head with a brick.
A stressful period for you.
But then at the same time, it's like you can't have the dream job and really complain about it. No, so. And
I think when you're dealing with those type of names as well, there's going to be whether it's people you've got to go through to get the booking sorted, and there's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? When you're dealing with the biggest names there are, and I think it's like I said, I think it says a tremendous amount about you and like the people who you work with, that you're still able to pull the meet and greet off. The other thing I was going to ask you, kind of about Inside the Ropes. So, I've been doing podcasts about a year or 18 months, say, and doing various ones. But over the 18 months, I've got to speak to and meet a lot of my heroes, a lot of people, and a big chunk of them now I kind of call friends. And sometimes I have to take a step back to appreciate it as I'm on this kind of weird ride, because, like, for instance, some of the footballers who I've spoken to, I'll kind of look at it and I'll think, wow, like, 2 years ago, it would have been quite cool to meet these people or whatever. And then I realised that I'm doing like regular podcasts with some of them, or I've had them on, or whatever it may be. Do you find it difficult to kind of enjoy the ride as you're doing it? Because obviously doing what you do, you have met and spoken to and interviewed some of the biggest names in wrestling that there are. So, like, I heard you talking on your podcast with Sean on Monday. You know, just that when you're watching wrestling, you're very much into it and you're shouting and screaming and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go and do the media stuff, you've obviously got to kind of do the media stuff and, you know, be that guy, if you like. Like, it's not two different people, but I know, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So do you find it difficult to kind of enjoy the ride and appreciate, like, the madness of it all?
I have to make a conscious effort to try and enjoy it because it is so stressful. But I mean, there's been so many great moments. I mean, I remember when we were doing the JR and Cornette show in London, and I was working at WhatCulture, and I was like, so basically we were doing this. JR and Cornette were coming to Newcastle to do a WhatCulture pay-per-view, and it was like Refuse to Lose. It was had Kurt Angle on it, Bret Hart, all these people, and Bret was arriving the day before, and then the day after the JR and Cornette show, Bret was going to be getting the train up to Newcastle with us. So I'd said, I was like, what do you think the chances are that Bret would like do a run-in? Well, not a run-in, but like he'd walk out on the JR and Cornette show. So he did, and like when we were like in the middle, so we had this bit where basically it was towards the end of the show, and then the lights just went out, and then Bret's music hit, and nobody knew what was going on. And then I just said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Bret the Hitman Hart," and people went mental. And there was like somebody told me a story about a guy almost fell off the balcony because he couldn't believe that Bret Hart had turned up. So stuff like that is really exciting. And yeah, I mean, you have to try and enjoy it because, and you know, there are people in wrestling who I could text right now, but I try to not really do that. I mean, it's difficult because even if you talk to wrestlers will say, you've got friends, but unless you're really working together, you don't really talk that much.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are people I would consider friends and stuff. So it's weird. I mean, the other week I was thinking about it, and I forgot that I had sung "With My Baby Tonight" in the Walkabout in Cardiff with Jeff Jarrett. How do you forget that you've done that? How do you forget that you sang that song? So the child version of me would just be like,
especially in Cardiff, it's like the greatest city in the world.
Indeed. Yeah. So I mean, that you end up doing stuff where you're like, I need to remember that I did that, or like, yeah, I need to be aware of it. So, but I have enjoyed it all, and I mean, the only time I've really not enjoyed what I'm doing is the first day of the Undertaker tour, where I had a bit of a breakdown and almost walked out. Like I legitimately, one of the people that were a situation happened, and it was so bad that I actually had an Uber booked to just go away. I was like, I'm done, I'm out. But then I was like, I can't do that. Like I can't. But I mean, apart from that one day, everything else has been like, I remember the first day of the Paul Heyman show in London, and I woke up and my phone's ringing. It's an unknown number, and I answer it. And on the other line, the person just says, "Hey, this is the Juice." I go, what? It was Juventud Guerrera, who had somehow got my number and wanted to come to the Heyman show. I mean, who wakes up at 9 a.m. in a travel lodge to a phone call from Juventud Guerrera? It's mad stuff that just is very bizarre. So, but I think that hopefully what helps is that people can see that I don't ever really call myself a journalist. I don't see myself as that. I just think I'm kind of a wrestling fan who talks to wrestlers and asks questions and tries to do what I think I would want to see if I was, you know, sitting watching stuff online.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like, let's talk about some of the guests that you've had on. So obviously yesterday I put out a post asking if anyone had anything they wanted particularly to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And one person tweeted me, ask him to tell the Scott Steiner story. And then someone else one of my friends texted me and said the same thing. So I'm not really familiar with this other than what you said on the podcast on Monday. So would you like to expand on the Scott Steiner story?
Am I allowed to use the F word?
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Okay. So we had done the tour with Sting, and we were thinking like how we wanted to test out how WCW legends would do on a tour. So we thought Scott Steiner, we'll bring him over. So we brought him over, and we were in Glasgow, and the whole thing was called Uncensored. It was supposed to be he can say whatever he wants, And we had a bit where, like, every night we would play on the screen Hulk Hogan on the stand in his trial, saying, I do not have a 10-inch penis. That's Hulk Hogan. So he would rip him and all that kind of stuff. So in Glasgow, and my mum is in the audience because she comes to all the shows, and he just starts talking about Stephanie McMahon, and then it just gets really graphic, and he's talking about like face fucking her, and it just was like
Jesus.
And in my mind, I'm like, it's getting to a point where even I'm a bit like,
yeah, okay.
So then Robert, who was on stage with me, he was saying, what can I do to diffuse this? So he just goes, Scott, can you calm it down a little bit? Kenny's mum's in the audience. Oh, no. And he just turns around and goes, I'd fuck her too. And then the crowd start chatting Kenny's mum. And then my mum looks at me and just gives me that look as if to say, don't you fucking dare point me out. So, but then one of our crew, Ollie, who, I mean, after he's had 2 vodkas, he's high as a kite. So he starts pointing, like doing this is her. And then it was just the most bizarre situation. Scott Steiner threatened to fuck your mum. Wow. What do you do with that?
Yeah, I was going to say, that was going to be my next sentence. What can you do with that? It's kind of one of those situations where it is what it is.
As much as I would have enjoyed being medium Kenny Pump, but it didn't quite work out. But he was so fun. Like, he was really fun. And like in Belfast, I think it was, we lost him backstage, and then he was like pacing backstage listening to disco music to amp up, like Disco Inferno. Very strange. Not Disco Inferno, the wrestlers' music, but like disco music from the 70s.
So you've had like some pretty kind of I don't know if you'd say controversial. I suppose some of them controversial now since like Sonny, Jim Cornette, and even like Paul Heyman and people who maybe have courted controversy at certain points. What's kind of like the wildest thing you've witnessed, whether it's at the shows or around the shows, with all these various people?
I don't know if there's anything wild. I don't know if there's anything wild that I've witnessed. I mean, I do remember that, like, because when we had Sonny, like, I mean, Sonny at the time, Sonny doesn't know that I'm gay, so Sonny didn't know that, like, her attempts at flirting are not going to work with me. Yeah. Like, I mean, there's like Becky Lynch and I had a brief flirtation. I was like, she's so attractive, I'll flirt with Becky Lynch, even if it's not going to go anywhere, happily, but not Sonny. Like, yeah. And so anyway, so she'd come over and she brought her sister. Now, her sister was this girl who was of a different ethnicity and at least 15 years younger. And then she kept, like, basically bringing the girl up during the show, telling me, yeah, that's my sister, Julie. You can buy one of her 8x10s. And get on and on. And then the show finished and she's got her suitcases and she turned around to me and she just sort of very flirtatiously was like, Julie and I are going to the strip club. Do you want to join us? And I just looked at her and was like, absolutely not. Have a good night. No, and I walked off and got a McDonald's and went home. And I'm happy with my choice. I'm happy that I did. But the sort of the young part of you going, Sonny invited you to a strip club. I mean, I'm sure she was just probably trying to sell 8x10s in there, but but yeah, nothing too wild. But being invited to a strip club by Sonny is pretty cool, even if it is 2013 Sonny. Yeah,
I mean, so you've also got. I was looking on the Inside the Ropes website earlier. There's a show with Kevin Owens still scheduled. Is that still on as of today?
As of today,
which is going on, I'm supposing it's.
I mean, we have a call scheduled later this week to discuss. I mean, look, it's not looking great that it's going to happen in November, but we are doing our best to make it happen. WWE, I want it to happen, so we are trying. Because we are trying to keep it open as long as we can in case there's some way that it can happen. But it's becoming clearer and clearer that November 5th is probably not going to happen. So. We need to look into alternatives, but I don't know what that's going to be yet. but we'll try our best to sort of make sure that people who have bought tickets are happy.
Yeah, I think Kevin Owens will be phenomenal, I've got to say, in a show like that. I just think he's one of those guys who's perfect for it. He's so charismatic, but also he comes across as just being so nice as well. Like he just seems like a genuinely good person from everything which I see and kind of heard. So you mentioned kind of earlier, kind of not a change in direction, but like obviously with lockdown and things like this, you have had to adapt and roll with the punches, as it were. Obviously, you've added a podcast with Sean Ross Sapp. You've added Alex McCarthy's interviews to the YouTube channel. Was that kind of a conscious decision to kind of add more variety of content, or was it just, did you think something which would have probably naturally happened anyway?
I think because, I mean, when lockdown happened, for the first kind of 3.5 months of lockdown, March, April, May, June, really, I think we all thought, well, hopefully this is all going to be over by July, so we don't really need to worry too much. Everybody was thinking that by now, in September, that we were going to be back up and running and we were going to be doing stuff again. And so for the first couple of months, it wasn't really an issue. It was just more, we've luckily got this archive of content from live shows, so we can still put stuff up on the YouTube channel. We'll still do the podcast. And then, so basically I got together in July with Dan Richardson, and we decided to put together Inside the Ropes magazine, a print magazine. The first, since Power Slam, I've always kind of wanted there to be like a similar magazine. So we decided to come up with the Mount Rushmore of wrestling journalism, which was, Brian Elliott from FSM and Keith Elliott Greenberg from WWF magazine, Finn Martin, Bill Apter, the sort of grandfather of wrestling magazines. So the magazine thing came around, and that was just like a really big thing. And then that kind of spawned my mind to be like, I think we need to not freshen things up. I think we need to add some stuff. So, I'm a really big fan of Alex McCarthy and what he does, and he's a really good journalist. So I just thought, I think it would be good for him and good for us to, his content goes out in Talk Sport, obviously, or Talk Wrestling, the radio show, and then those interviews are there. So why don't we put them out on this big platform of 173,000 people? And it allows both of us to get to more people. And then the Sean Ross Sapp thing was Sean and I actually met like 3 times, as we talked about in the podcast. We met at like Double or Nothing, then we met at SummerSlam, then we met at All Out in 2019. So we met at all these things. So, and we had a really good kind of relationship. We got on really well. So it seemed like a no-brainer to do something at some point. And then we had a conversation recently about doing this kind of weekly thing, because he's got Fightful and he's got a lot of obligations, so you've got to figure something out. It's easy enough for both of us. So 45 minutes every Monday where we just sit down and talk about the weekend, talk about what's going on. It's a bit of a laugh for both of us, and hopefully I think that Fightful and Inside the Ropes are quite similar brands in terms of what people want. So it feels like people from Fightful who've not checked out Inside the Ropes will get more of what they like, and vice versa with Inside the Ropes people who haven't checked out Fightful.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like both guys, absolute top guys. I got so much time for both of them. Like Sean's helped me a lot. I've asked him, particularly when I first kind of was starting out, I was asking him questions all the time, and he'd always reply, even though I know he's inundated with DMs and he's busy doing this, that, and the other. He always replies. He always. He
remembers being in your position. He remembers being, I mean, because it's different for me, because what Sean does and what I do are very different. But like, I often find it quite difficult when people ask advice about podcasting, because it's so difficult now because there's so many podcasts. I mean, when we started doing ours in 2012, this was before any wrestler podcast had come around. The only one that was around we started was Colt Cabana with The Art of Wrestling.
Yeah.
But then if you look at like now, I mean, if you're a wrestling fan, right, and you say you have 8 hours a week where you can listen to wrestling podcasts, and say you want to make sure that you listen to Jericho's 2, and then you want to listen to an Out of Observer, and then you want to listen to Grill and JR, and then you want to listen
to post shows and
so before you know it, everything, all your time's gone. So then for somebody new to come in, it's really difficult, even if it's good. So I think, what people like Sean they remember what it's like to be in the position of like, okay, I've been doing this for a little while, but I want to do more and I want to keep going. What can I do? So, I think if you're someone who's in Sean's position or my position and you're not open to giving people advice, then you're a bit of an arsehole.
Short memories, I guess. But no, I mean, I've been really lucky in that, like I said, I've only been doing it 18 months, but I've been lucky that I've had, some incredible guests, and, people, I was surprised because of a couple of people who I've asked, not from the wrestling industry, fully enough, but who asked for a lot of money to appear, and I was a bit like, no, just because, like, if it was an in-person thing, then maybe I'd be like, yes, okay. But I just feel like it's a phone call. I'm not going to give you the one person, which I'm not going to out them, but they asked for like 300 quid for 45 minutes. And I was just like...
But, my one piece of advice for that is we paid a couple of people for interviews back in the day, in 2012. And, I won't say who, but we paid for one, which was 15 minutes, and it was a waste of time. I mean, it wasn't a waste of time, it was good, but it was just, we shouldn't have paid for it. But the one that we did pay for that really did well for us was we paid Vince Russo in 2012 to interview him right after he'd left TNA. And the reason that it was worthwhile is because so many people found our podcast through that interview. So I think, I would be open to paying somebody for something if it's like an exclusive... right person, you're confident that you're going to get stuff from them that's going to be... But, don't pay someone who does a load of media anyway, because then it's like you're essentially paying when they might just say that stuff to somebody else. So, but I think it's right to definitely be selective with that. I mean, it's funny. I will not name names, but for the magazine, we're obviously working on issue 2 right now, because issue 1, which you can purchase at InsideTheRopesMagazine.com, by the way. We're working on issue 2 already, obviously, and we're going to be doing like a short interview, like a 1-page interview. And we reached out to what we thought would be a very fun 90s WWF name, mid-card name, not a top guy. And we just said, look, we're just looking for 50 minutes. It's print magazine. And we were told, he will need to see the questions. He needs to know how long it's going to be, and he's going to need a fee. And it's like, for a magazine that's a print magazine, it's going to go out to thousands of people. Like, you do not need to be paid to do that. But yeah, I think as a general rule of thumb, it's not the best idea, but I think there are the odd exceptions, and for us, Russo was that exception.
Yeah, and I think, like, I'm not like completely closed off to the idea, but kind of like the person who asked for that amount of money for a very short kind of time was like...
You definitely have to DM me and let me know who it is, by the way.
Yeah.
Just
probably won't know who it is, though. That's
oh, really?
That's the thing. Like, I've had bigger guests, and I've been so lucky because I've spoken to, like I said, I've spoken to some heroes. I've spoken to some big names in football and MMA and things like this, which have been done either through the kindness of their heart and just giving up their time, like yourself, or just through a friend of a friend, or whatever it may be. And like, even in your situation, like, there's there's no reason for you to come on my show, but you said you would, so.
But
do you know what I mean? Like, you've got your platforms, streets and streets ahead of where I am, and you don't have to give up your time from a busy schedule to speak to me. And that's why I appreciate it so much, because you're not.
But the thing is, it's like you need to you need to remember that, like, doing media is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. I don't do it a lot because I don't really think people would be interested to hear what I've got to say. But now that there's a magazine coming out, it would be crazy for me to not be open to doing that. But I mean, the thing is that I remember being in your position. I remember messaging people asking for interviews. So I think when you've been in that position, then you're more, what's the word? You're more sort of sympathetic to it because you've been in that spot. Like I remember in 2012 messaging people on Facebook like every day, like trying to get interviews. And it's rough, and because the level of yes to no is
level of response sometimes is non-existent.
But look, I mean, the thing is, and if I take a pure sort of like you seem like a good guy and I want to come on and talk to you, if I take that out of it, if I do this and one person subscribes to our magazine, then what a bonus,
No, absolutely, and like I just enjoy talking. I started doing podcasting just really for my own mental health. Like I've got some physical health problems, and it was getting to me, and I was like, oh, I've got to do something. Like I really, this is really getting to me. I was struggling big time. So I thought, I've wanted to do podcasting for a long time. I'd done a couple with Sean on like Fightful Select. So I was like, right, I'm just going to do it. So I just started it, did it with some friends to start with, and then kind of just progressed to where it is. And
I'll put it this way:
this growth.
I've been doing podcasts for 8 years, and I legitimately do not know how to do what you've done with your background. I have no idea. So you're further ahead than me in knowing how to do things.
My dog's about to go nuts because someone just knocked the door. It's always handy when you're recording
the joys of independent podcasting.
That's it, mate. So just to kind of finish off, I wanted to ask you a couple of things about wrestling, kind of just generally. What's your favourite show to watch at the moment, currently, weekly?
I would have said up until recently Dynamite with AEW. I do still really enjoy that show. I'm also enjoying SmackDown a lot. I thought SmackDown last week was killer, like the Bayley turn and the Roman heel turn, and Big E now is a babyface, and I think they're doing some really interesting stuff. But it's between Dynamite and SmackDown for me, just because they feel more chaotic and they feel more urgent.
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree with that. I thought, actually, up until this week, I thought Raw had been better the last couple of weeks as well.
Raw's been decent.
A bit of a dive this week. I think AEW and NXT have been consistent, although I don't know what it is with NXT at the moment. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the lack of Full Sail crowd, if it's the aesthetic of Full Sail. There's just something which is, for me, is just not quite clicking, and I enjoy their stories, I enjoy the characters, I like the wrestlers, etc. There's just something, and I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big 60-minute Iron Man match fan, so like because I struggle to pay attention for kind of that long, so that's kind of that's a struggle for me. But yeah, I think NXT will come, especially with Balor as the new champion. I think that'll be a new interesting way to go. So, and they've got a takeover coming up soon, I think in October. So yeah. I'm sure they'll start building stuff soon. It'll get better.
Final question: would you turn Adam? Would you implode the Undisputed Era, or would you move them in the draft to a SmackDown?
Oh, I would move them. I would move them to Raw to basically count. Like, I think Retribution have been pretty diabolical, to be honest, just because I think the verbiage has been really overscripted. But I'm hoping that once they sort of unmask and they figure out who they are, that they can be a kind of faction. So I like the idea of maybe the Undisputed Era coming to even the odds. And hopefully.
And you've got the Hurt Business as well, so it kind of makes sense to have.
You've got a lot of factions going on, and that can kind of. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to give us the Shield versus the Wyatt family from Elimination Chamber 2014, but if we can get close to that one more time, then I'd be mad into it. And I think factions are long-time fans really enjoy factions, and factions are a good way to, people like Shelton Benjamin or Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, or Dominic Dijakovic, if he's in that faction, like those are ways to get those guys further because they're in groups with really interesting stories.
Yeah, the most important thing is that whoever's in Retribution, they can be stars, whoever it is, but it's how they're portrayed. If they're losing matches 2 weeks in, then they'll be dead in the water as quick as can be. If
Yeah.
they're portrayed as a big deal and they slot into like the main guy or girl, whoever's in the group, if they slot in at the top of the card and they beat Randy Orton like Keith Lee did, or whoever, like a main event star, and you portray them as main event stars, if their work is good as well, then that's what they'll be.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Okay, Kenny, thank you so much for your time. Tell the people where they can find the various Inside the Ropes.
Yes, you can if you search for Inside the Ropes on any podcast platforms, for Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you can find all of our podcasts on there, from the Power Slam podcast with Finn Martin, the Inside the Ropes podcast with myself and Sondra, who is a crazy American lady who started watching wrestling in 2010 and doesn't understand why people love The Undertaker so much, and now Monday Night Live with Sean Ross Sapp. We've got a Patreon, which is the best way that you can kind of directly support us. We do a lot of bonus content on there, patreon.com/Inside the Ropes. Subscribe or buy a copy of our magazine if you like print magazines. If you used to read Power Slam or used to read WWF magazine, you can go to InsideTheRopesMagazine.com. And then finally, you can go to our YouTube channel to get loads of interview content from past live shows. I do interviews on Zoom. We've got Alex McCarthy interviews on there as well now. So YouTube.com/Inside the Ropes. There's an interview that went up last night with Chris Jericho, talking about the Roman Reigns heel turn, helping Sammy Guevara get through some of his issues, John Moxley, Mimosa Mayhem. So there's tons and tons of stuff if you enjoy wrestling.
Indeed. Just quickly,
sure.
Kelly, sorry. With the Inside the Ropes, like the past shows which you've done, the spoken word shows, are they available on like DVD or on demand for people to watch?
They are not available. We decided a long time ago that the best way for everybody from the talent to us is to have promotional clips on YouTube.
Yeah.
Rather than selling full shows. Plus, it'd be a different agreement with talent to do that, to have a full show.
Royalties and stuff.
Yeah, and the other thing is that nowadays you can't really control people just ripping stuff and using it. So, for example, we put up a clip months ago of Cody Rhodes talking about his favourite Undertaker story when he was in the 2008 Royal Rumble. And I've seen 5 or 6 YouTube videos that have basically taken that and monetized it themselves, which is totally it's fair game when it's on YouTube, I guess. I say it's fair game. We will dispute it, but it is, people do it. So I think, if we were to sell a DVD for $15 or something, guaranteed it would be ripped to be on torrent sites, it'd be on YouTube. So it just doesn't seem like the best.
I'd like to watch some of them.
Yeah, well, we have a bank of the stuff that will keep going up on YouTube. So we will, more will keep going up all the time.
Indeed, Kenny, thank you for joining me, mate. I really, really appreciate your time.
Thanks,
guys, thanks for watching, listening. Subscribe, youtube.com/A.C.E Podcast Nation for podcast interviews and content on all sorts of subjects. And you can also find all our shows in audio format on various platforms, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, basically everywhere you can find a podcast. Just search A.C.E Podcast Nation and you'll see a load of different series. Cheers, Kenny. Thank you. And thanks to everyone.
Thanks.